What's up, Vikings fans? Thank you for joining me on the maiden voyage of the Purple Stuff Pod, where we'll be doing game previews, game reviews, film breakdowns, news updates, and my personal favorite, Vikings related rants. My name is Kyle McQueen, and I am a die-hard, lifelong Vikings fan with a master's degree in being an absolute football sicko. And today we're going to kick off the channel with a preview of the Vikings home opener 2025 against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I want to start off with a quick little review of the Vikings' Week 1 victory in Soldier Field against the Chicago Bears. And the subject's been beaten to death this week, and rightfully so. But J.J. McCarthy has arrived. He is our starting quarterback. He is the savior. He is the one that will lead us to our very first and many more Vince Lombardi trophies. If you're not on the bandwagon, get on the bandwagon. I was pounding the table for this guy pre-draft. I admittedly am a Michigan fan, but that just gave me a reason to dive deep into this guy, watching the film, watching interviews, and I'm telling you, like I said, I've been pounding the table for a year and a half on this dude. He is the truth, and he showed it in the fourth quarter, and I know the skeptics will say, well, what about the first three quarters? And that's just part of the equation. I mean, the Bears, I've been saying this for a couple years. The Bears have an underrated defense. They got some players on there. Dennis Allen is a tremendous defensive coordinator. And I did feel like Kevin O'Connell was a bit tentative. He had the training wheels on JJ to start the game. They were trying a little too hard, I felt like, to make him comfortable, not put too much on him too early. And they just couldn't get into a rhythm. They couldn't get anything going. They couldn't get first downs. And if you can't get first downs, you really can't get anything going. They got the nice pass to Jalen Naylor before the half to set up the 59-yard field goal by Will the Thrill Reichard, and which ties a Soldier Field record, I might add. And that seemed like maybe this will get JJ going, and then they come out and they're not really doing much in the third quarter. He throws the pick six to Nashawn Wright, and I was reminded of the TCU game in JJ's first full year as a starter, his sophomore year in the college playoff. There was the two pick sixes, and then he comes back and they gave up 50 something points, which is very uncharacteristic of that Michigan team, of a Jim Harbaugh team. But they put up 40 something in their own. He really responded to the two pick sixes. And obviously, you don't want your team to throw a pick six, but I feel like we saw that here. Third quarter, he throws the pick six. I have another video up. This is technically the first episode of the show. The other video is from my other channel called Football Heads, where we just talk NFL football in general. But J.J. McCarthy, there's just a mythology to him that was added to in multiple ways on Monday night. The comeback, obviously, and him and Steve Young being the only ones to engineer a double-digit deficit. Say that 5 times fast. Double-digit deficit comeback in the fourth quarter of their debut. Only quarterback to account for 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter of his debut, so on and so forth. But him going into the huddle, looking everyone in the eye and say, where else would you rather be? Like, that's just the type of J.J. McCarthy mythology. And to me, him throwing a pick six and bouncing back from that, it's just part of the mythology. But it is week 1. I don't care what team you root for, what team you're going against, what team you're looking at. If it's just a random afternoon game and you're killing time until Sunday Night Football, you don't want to take too much away from week 1. But I thought the Vikings defense looked fantastic. There was a drive where DeAndre Swift started running pretty hard there in the third quarter. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that was reminded of, I think it was a Monday night game. It was week 2 in 2022 after they beat the dog piss out of the Packers in week 1, Kevin O'Connell's second game. And they played the Eagles, and DeAndre Swift just ran all over him. He ran for 200 something yards. So that was in the back of my mind headed into the game. Everybody else on earth is not a fan of DeAndre Swift. Don't think he's a very good running back. Don't think he has very good vision. But I just think of that game and I'm like, well, that one time against the Vikings, he ran for 200 yards. So that kind of is what it is, but he wasn't doing much. And then there was one drive in the third quarter where he really started running hard. He was running through guys, and I'm thinking to myself, like, damn, like, it's not that the defense isn't playing hard and they're not giving their all, but it's just one of those things where everything's going wrong and you just sort of mentally start to accept that things are going wrong. But they bowed up. They didn't allow a score on the drive. But all night, I thought the pressure was fantastic. Obviously, Caleb is incredibly slippery. He averaged 4 sacks a game last year, but for whatever reason, because we're the Vikings, he just slips and slides away from everyone. And we had some sacks last year, but I remember the same thing happening where it was just like, oh, against us, we're going to see like A plus Caleb Williams. Like, this is the guy that he's supposed to be, Caleb Williams. And we just couldn't get him on the ground. Eventually, Javon Hargrave got him on the ground. Hargrave got another sack later because Caleb stepped out of bounds. But really, once Ben Johnson got through his scripted plays, the defense really bowed up. Caleb completed less than 50% of his passes after the scripted plays. And they were just on him all night. Jonathan Grenard, I saw some people saying, Grenard needs to do more. He didn't do enough. I disagree. Pressures are a very incongruent stat depending on where you look at them, that you'll get different numbers. But the number I saw was 7 pressures for him. The interior defensive line last year between Jerry Tillery, Jonathan Bullard, and Jalen Redmond, 41 total pressures. In week 1 alone, Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen combined for 13 pressures. So get used to that. Van Ginkel obviously is running like a madman out there. We're going to miss him this week. We'll get to the injury report a little bit later. But I expect some good things from Dallas Turner. Brian Flores had a ton of praise for Dallas Turner, so he did some great things, and that he should have been in there more. He felt like he was in there more because he felt like he was having an impact. But the pressure was fantastic. On the offensive side of the ball, again, pressures are an incongruent stat, but I saw Ryan Kelly, 0 pressures. Rookie Donovan Jackson going up against Grady Jarrett, who, he may be a shell or a husk of who Grady Jarrett once was in his prime with Atlanta, but 0 pressures for the rookie Donovan Jackson. If you were following the camp notes, if you're a Purple Daily fan and you watched Judd's camp notes, Donovan Jackson, he looks real good in the run game, but he might take some time in the pass game. However, he is going up against Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, and we saw how that looked like when they were rushing someone other than our guy. But Donovan Jackson, 0 pressures. Will Fries, 1 pressure. Justin School obviously was, I don't want to say a full-blown disaster. When left on an island, he was a little bit of a disaster, so that's going to be something to watch. Again, we'll get to the injury report later. But I think in the second half, they started helping him out a little bit more. You saw some different blocking schemes. Donovan Jackson kind of freed up to hunt some ribs and help out School, kind of forced his guy more to the outside. Jordan Mason had some incredible pass block reps. Limited sample size for us Vikings fans, but he looked tremendous in both the run game and in pass blocking, which is going to be useful, especially until we get Darisaw back. But the investments they made on the interior lines in the trenches, and I've been screaming about this for years. I mean, the interior offensive line, I feel like we've all been screaming about for well over a decade at this point. Like, when's the last time you truly felt we had a really good to great interior offensive line? 2009? 2010, maybe, which was a disaster season. Like, certainly with the last 12, 13 years, it's just been terrible, just dreadful. And Again, it's a small sample size, but they got some decent pieces up front for the Chicago Bears, and just felt like other than Justin School, especially the interior, did a tremendous job. I talked about the 13 pressures with Hargrave and Allen. Just the investments paying off. Eric Wilson had to step in at linebacker, another free agent addition. We know what Eric Wilson's all about. Started his career here, and very low key signing, very unsexy signing compared to all the other signings that happened before that. But very consequential now with Blake Cashman going on IR. That he came in, obviously he blocked that punt, but he had 5 tackles. It looked like he did back in the day when Anthony Barr would go down for a couple games, Eric Kendricks would go down for a couple games, and Dub had to step in, and it always felt seamless. It always felt like, yeah, Barr is a stud, Kendricks is a stud, but if Wilson's got to step in for 2, 3, maybe 4 games, like with the other pieces around, like you never felt like there was a glaring weakness in there. So hopefully he can do the same with Flores in this defense, where we still got a ton of great pieces around. The secondary looked a bit rough. Byron Murphy didn't have the best game. I didn't notice too much from Isaiah Rodgers, but there was a lot. Again, Caleb completed less than 50% of his passes after the scripted plays, where he started 10 for 10, went right down the field to start the game. But there were guys running open. There was that one corner route to DJ Moore later on in the game that Caleb missed. He just missed a lot of easy throws. So that concerns me a little bit, because Michael Penix is a very accurate guy. So Michael Penix ain't gonna miss all those. So the flip side to that is Michael Penix, who is more mobile than he was advertised to be coming out of the draft, for sure. Like if you watch the game that they played against the Bucks, I think he had six carries, I want to say, and 6 carries for like 21 yards, which ain't great, but it's enough mobility. He can move around. And he's a very quick top 10 in the league in terms of time to throw, which obviously is a small sample size with the 1 game this year and 3 starts last year. But that's kind of his MO, is a quick time to throw. And that's what the Falcons offenses looked like, at least, is a lot of flat routes. Bijan Robinson had 100 yards receiving on six catches. Kyle Pitts had 7 catches. Fantasy football freaks out there still waiting for him to emerge, but 7 catches for 59 yards, not too bad. So a lot of quick game there. So on one hand, you could say, well, we're not going to have all these pressures. The Vikings, according to Pro Football Reference, had the most pressures of any team in week 1 with 15. And if we have that many pressures against Michael Penix, like we're gonna sack him more than just the 2 times. He's not gonna run around and slide around like Caleb did. But hopefully we can get him down. But the time to throw kind of scares me, because he is one to get the ball out. So we're gonna have to get there quick. But Jonathan Grenard has one of the quickest get-offs, not just in the league, but one of the quickest get-offs that I've ever seen. And I've been watching football religiously for 23 years now. So that'll be interesting to watch, because if you can get to him quick, if you can get him on the ground and he's not buying time like Caleb did. Like Caleb did a lot of his damage. It's shocking, I know. Off script, off platform, outside of structure. So, and that's not Penix's game. Like he can move around a little bit more than advertised, but he wants to sit in the pocket and stay on script, stay on platform, stay on schedule. So if we can get to him quick, we may be able to mitigate that and not have people running wide open downfield. But the Vikings run game came along there against the Bears. First half, it was pretty abysmal. Aaron Jones did not have his best game running the ball. Obviously, he had the nice touchdown, which that was a beautiful play. I'm going to try and do a film breakdown on that. Where I can't actually use the film because We will get strikes against us from the league because I cannot afford to pay them, but with some screenshots because the play design on that was tremendous. But running the ball, not his best day. But Jordan Mason really kickstarted it. He had that one nice run down the side that kind of opened things up. JJ started getting involved, had the couple catches, including the touchdown to Justin Jefferson, kind of got everyone off the schneid, took some of the pressure off, like, okay, we can do this. And then they were off to the races at that point. Jordan Mason was a huge part of that. He is just a hammerhead in the backfield. And again, another addition. I've made my apologies before last season to Kwesi for talking a lot of smack about that dude. There's still a lot of you out there. I know there is. The ones saying, well, yeah, but he can't draft. It's like, well, if JJ's the guy, then he drafted the guy. If JJ's the one, he drafted the one. Jordan Addison's been a nice pick. Tyree and Ingram Dawkins was mixing in, and it's not all on Kwesi. He is an asset manager. He's not Rick Spielman, who thinks he's a football guy and wants to build the team in his vision, and then him and Mike Zimmer end up not talking. Kwesi is a commodities trader, an asset manager. He's going to trust Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores, the assistant coaches, the scouts, and go get guys that fit the profiles that those guys want. It's not the players he likes that he wants. So part of that you got to put on the coaching staff, that these might be players they like. Then they get on the team, they didn't develop them. So we got to lay off Kwesi a little bit because he absolutely has just cooked the last 2 off seasons. Again, Hargrave and Allen, the new interior defensive lineman, Jordan Mason, bringing back Eric Wilson, who's already paying dividends, had the block punt, like I said, in the first game. And yeah, I mean, it's just he assembled a tremendous roster, and they all showed up to play in that first game. So a lot to clean up. Obviously, nothing you want to get too crazy one way or the other on, because again, it's one game. But there was a lot to like about that first game, how the Vikings looked. And I feel like Kevin O'Connell's play calling really came along. Once he got out of his own head and then JJ got out of his head. Not that JJ's not a guy who's in his head. I think it was a lot of it was the product of he hadn't played in 609 days. He hadn't played a meaningful game. And there's gonna be emotions and there's gonna be nerves. He knows how to handle the nerves, but there's going to be all those things and just knocking the rust off. And Kevin O'Connell wasn't necessarily putting him in the best position to succeed, and they just weren't executing. Just couldn't get into a rhythm, and it was ugly for a while. But a win is a win is a win. And Kevin O'Connell's play calling, I thought, by the end of the game, was some of the best play calling that I've ever seen. Like, I have my little critiques here and there of Kevin O'Connell's play calling over the years, but that fourth quarter I thought was maybe the best play calling job that Kevin O'Connell has ever done. So that's it for the Vikings review. Let's look at the Falcons, just so we know what we're up against. A narrow defeat to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 23-20. They had a chance to tie it at the end of the game. Young Hui Koo could not get it done. He has been benched for an old friend, Parker Romo, filling in. So that's obviously terrifying. Parker Romo revenge game possibly coming up. But why should he want revenge? We gave him an opportunity. We gave him an opportunity to kick in regular season games, in a meaningful game, for the first time in his career. He should have nothing but love for the Vikings. In fact, he should purposely miss a kick in crunch time to help us. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But I watched this game. I did feel like the vibe I had watching it was, if the Falcons win this game, kind of sort of bullshit. Not like Cincinnati beating Cleveland, where if you watch that game, it was like Cleveland should have won that game. If things played out the way they played out, would have won that game 99 times out of 100. But nobody could catch the ball, and it's not like CD Lamb against the Eagles, or the couple Justin Jefferson drops, which that's another thing we didn't touch on, is Justin Jefferson, rather pedestrian game. That's not going to happen all the time. Obviously, he was out with a hamstring for a while, so there's a little rust to knock off for him too. So it's not going to be long until we're at halftime of one of these games, and it's like, oh shit, Justin Jefferson has 7 catches for 120 yards at the half. So get ready for that. Once him and JJ start clicking, because Jets, it's that those dig routes, those intermediate crossers. That's where he makes his money. And that if you've watched JJ, if you've watched him in college, those are his money throws. Like these two, along with Kevin O'Connell, who like that's really what he prefers. They tweaked it a lot last year with Sam Darnold, who likes to go deep and wasn't as accurate throwing into the tight windows in the middle. But that's what KOC likes to do. Those are the types of throws JJ thrives on. Those are his best throws. And that's where Justin Jefferson is at his absolute best. When that starts clicking, that trio of people all centered around that particular type of route concept, it's going to be disgusting. So get ready for that. But Atlanta, I don't know. It just felt like if they won it, they kind of stole it. There was just a couple little things. They did a nice job on Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, 17 for 32 for 167 yards. Now, he did have 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and no fumbles. So that looks nice. But watching the game, I just felt like, because I am a Baker fan, so I do like to watch Baker when I get the chance, when it doesn't coincide with the Vikings games. He just looked off all day, looked inefficient, and that is something to, I don't want to say be concerned about, to keep your eyes on, is Atlanta's secondary. They got a very nice secondary. We know about Jesse Bates, who's been a Pro Bowl player, was with the Bengals when they went to that Super Bowl in 2021. He's an excellent player. But AJ Terrell, another excellent corner. I'm not familiar enough with how Raheem Morris goes about his business as to whether AJ Terrell is going to follow Justin Jefferson around. I feel like I usually see AJ Terrell on the left side, defense left side. But that could just be coincidence in my mind. I mean, he's certainly of the caliber that he can follow someone around, and I would expect that to be a possibility, if not a probability. But they added Xavier Watts in the 3rd round, who is a guy that I really liked, and I was kind of sort of hoping that we would go out and try and draft, and they drafted him right before us, and then we traded back the few picks and picked up Ty Felton. Now, I don't know if they were going to take Xavier Watts, and that's why they traded back, but I liked Watts a lot. I mean, obviously we got a deep safety room, but didn't really know what to expect from Jay Ward. You still can't be 100% sure on Theo Jackson, but again, if you're a Judd's Camp Notes guy, Theo Jackson is a guy, if you watched the Seattle game last year, sealed the game with a pick. But eventually Harry is going to retire and we will have no hitman, and Flores likes to run the 3 safety sets. So we would have Metellus, Theo Jackson, Jay Ward, sort of an unknown. So I was looking at, let's add another guy. Xavier Watts was a guy that I really liked, and he played fantastic. He has the speed, the lateral quickness. He was all over the place. Played a great game. Billy Bowman Jr. was another player that I liked, sort of a safety nickel hybrid, which is why I kind of zeroed in on him as a day 3 pick that might fit what they wanted to do. A bit undersized, but he was all over the place. Obviously, they had Jalen Walker, James Pierce Jr. They threw a lot of assets. Rook Ororo in his 2nd year. They added a lot of assets to the defense. Divine Diablo has been playing good. He had a half sack, tied for the team lead in sacks and in tackles, both tied with Billy Bowman. He's been playing well. So they have some pieces on defense. The pass rush is still a work in progress. They sacked Penix once, and I believe they only got 3. Why are the pressures not on here? I believe they only had 3 total pressures in the game. Where are we? Pressures. Yeah, 3 total pressures, at least according to Pro Football Focus. Again, it's a very incongruent stat. James Pierce Jr. had one. Divine Diablo had one. Billy Bowman had one. So they still didn't get a ton of pass rush, which could be good because Darisaw is out, Justin School, presumably, possibly Walter Rouse, but the backup there. But if they were able to handle the Bears' defensive front, they should be able to handle Atlanta's defensive front. And then it's really just going to come down to, can they pick apart the defense and just not make the critical mistakes? Can Kevin O'Connor, is the play design on point? Is the play calling on point? Are we marrying the run and the pass? See how that all comes together. But again, Atlanta, not much of a pass rush last week. In run defense, they did a solid job, pretty good job actually. Bucky Irving, 14 attempts for 37 yards. Rashad White, 2 for 14. Baker Mayfield did scramble around, had 5 for 39. So maybe J.J. McCarthy can get out, scoot around. Now that we've all seen the type of athlete that the young man is. But conversely, Bijan Robinson, 12 carries for 24 yards. Tyler Algier, 10 carries for 24 yards. If you've watched football for any amount of time, you don't need me to tell you that that's pretty terrible. So they weren't able to get anything going on the ground. Caleb McGarry, the right tackle, is out for the season. They have a new center with Drew Dahlman going to Chicago. Jake Matthews is still going at left tackle, believe it or not. But their offensive line, not great. Not great. I expect Bijan is going to get his over the course of the season, but with the defensive front that we have and the guys at the second level, Eric Wilson is a good run defender. Ivan Pace Jr. is a good run defender. Hopefully we can shut down their run game. But like I said, Bijan did have 6 catches for 100 yards out of the backfield. So that's going to be something to watch for, especially with Jeff Okudah being out. He is, for all the things that he's been lambasted over since being drafted 3rd overall and being a complete bust, he is a very good tackler in run defense. So it hurts to have him out. But I mean, again, we still got some guys out there. Blake Cashman obviously is a sideline to sideline guy. He's not going to be out there. But as I said, Eric Wilson, very capable backup. So hopefully we can mitigate that a little bit. We got a little more youth there than the Bucks do, I feel like, on that second level. But again, Tampa has some talented guys. Antoine Winfield Jr., who should be a Viking, but that's neither here nor there. Yaya Diaby, Savassier Dennis has been having a nice year so far. And he started coming along a little bit last year. Hassan Reddick they added, Jamel Dean. Like they don't Vita Vea. They got some guys. So we'll see. Ultimately, Bijan's kind of a guy where he's going to find a way to get his to some extent. So can we just die a slow death and keep him out of the end zone enough to handle our business on offense and sneak out the win? As last checked, it was a 3.5 point spread in favor of the Vikings, maybe down to 3 points. But that was really the one thing on offense. Penix passed for a lot of yards and was pretty efficient, and Bijan had the 100 yards receiving. Drake London dealing with the shoulder injury. He does not have an injury designation, so he will play. Darnell Mooney, back from injury. He will play. So they're going to have some options. Again, like I said, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, some of these guys, they were running open. Caleb just couldn't hit them. So it's possible that Atlanta shifts their focus from a lot of these flat routes, a lot of these like quick outs, dump offs to Bijan and Kyle Pitts, and try and get a little more going. So I really do think one of the big keys to the game is how fast we can get to the quarterback and disrupt what Penix likes to do. Because when even if you move him off the spot and you don't get a sack, his accuracy drastically goes down. It was at least it was that way in college. I'm sure he's worked on some mechanics and things, but if you could get him off his spot, his accuracy drastically diminished. So that could be the key. And in much the same way with Caleb, that he just lost that accuracy throughout the game and couldn't hit those deep routes. That if we can move Penix off the spot, even if they have guys running wide open in the secondary, maybe we can mitigate that a bit. But ideally, you just want to get to the quarterback, get there fast, and get him on the ground. The quickest way to the quarterback is straight through the middle, and obviously Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen were in the backfield all day. So I think if we can replicate what we did on defense against the Bears, against the Falcons, we're going to put Penix in a very uncomfortable position. I think Caleb is much more comfortable working off schedule, off script than Penix is. So if we can replicate that again against, honestly, with the exception of left tackle, an inferior offensive line to what we went up against last week, if we can keep that pressure up, especially if we could do it without having to blitz too much, that should bode well for us. I think that is a huge key to victory for us. Let's go to the injury report. The injuries for us, Van Ginkel's out with a concussion that apparently he suffered on the last play of the game when they were kind of just like lateraling the ball around trying to figure something out. And I can't remember who it was. Was it Ivan Pace? Somebody just friendly fire blasted Van Ginkel in the helmet trying to knock the ball out. And now he's concussed and now he's out, which means Dallas Turner is going to see a massive uptick in snaps. I imagine he's going to see the most snaps he's ever seen in his career. And we're going to find out. We heard all offseason, he just mentally has turned a corner, physically has turned a corner. He's been dedicated. He's been in the building. He wasn't flying to Tulum and Cabo and the French Riviera and in Japan and all these other places. He was locked in, getting his work in, and I expect good things. He had an interception last year. He had a very good coverage grade last year, and not the biggest sample size, but very effective in that Van Ginkel role where sometimes he's off ball, sometimes he's rushing the passer. So small sample size, but we're going to get a big sample size here in week 2 against the Falcons. I'm excited to see Dallas Turner unleashed. I think he's got the physical tools. Again, coming into the league, he was a very young guy, some raw tools, but you're in a room with Grenard, you're in a room with Van Ginkel, you got Brian Flores. Like, you're in the best position possible to develop those raw tools. And again, in the small sample size, he graded out well. I know fans look at the stats and they want to see the sack numbers and all that, but there's more to it than that. And I think he's going to have a real nice game, especially because Grenard typically lines up on the other side where he'll be the one going up against Jake Matthews. Dallas Turner going to go up against the backup, obviously with McGarry out. This could be a breakout game for Dallas Turner. And if it's not, let's not get too carried away and, just looking at some of the less sexy stats. And even then, it's like sometimes you're not set up to get the stat. Like Anthony Barr was a guy that everyone always said, if he went somewhere else or if we changed the scheme and we let him rush the edge, he'd get all these sacks. And he would have. But he didn't rack up the stats, but he was the linchpin to the defense. And I'm not saying that's going to be Dallas Turner, but let's not put too much stock into how he performs, unless he performs really well, in which case let's take it to the bank. Dallas Turner is going to be the next all-pro edge rusher in the league. But so I'm excited to see him do his thing. And again, you got Hargrave, Allen, and Grenard alongside you, so it's not all on him. So that he's not getting double teamed. There is no point in this game where he's going to get double teamed, at least not intentionally. So I expect him to get home, take that to the bank. Dallas Turner, he's going to get at least one sack in this game on Michael Penix. But if we can mitigate Bijan, we'll be good to go. Drake London could be a concern. He's on the injury list for the Falcons, or he was. He ended up being a limited participant, but does not have a designation. Him and Darnell Mooney. But you're dealing with shoulder injuries. Like it's. I don't know if he's fully healed. James Pierce Jr. has a groin injury. He's going to play, but could it limit his movement? Could he not be at 100%? I'm sure he's not at 100%, but could it limit him in some capacity where an already weak-ish pass rush is a little bit weaker because he, as a young guy with all this the physical tools and the athleticism and all that, a groin's tough. A groin, hamstring, things like that. Like even if you're playing through it, like it's not exactly cozy out there. So that could have an impact. And who else do we got on this injury report for the Falcons? For us, obviously, Darisaw, as I had mentioned, is not playing. Van Ginkel's not playing. Cashman's on IR. Here we go. For the Falcons, Jamal Agnew is out. He only played one snap in week 1. Jordan Fuller's out. He didn't play any snaps. Jack Nelson's out. He's a 7th round rookie tackle, so he wasn't going to play. Casey Washington is out. Casey Washington played 72 snaps. However, a lot of that was filling in because Darnell Mooney didn't play. So you're swapping out Casey Washington for Darnell Mooney, who's a better player. So that's not really going to be a huge impact. So unfortunately, we're not getting any real luck with the injuries for them. But again, Billy Bowman's questionable with a shoulder. So we'll see. Again, I loved him. I thought he played a really nice game. He was a guy I loved coming out. James Pierce questionable with the groin, so if he goes, we'll see how that goes. But everybody else is healthy, whereas the Vikings, again, no Darisaw, no Van Ginkel, no Okuda with the concussion. Harrison Smith questionable with this very strange illness thing. And I want to respect his privacy, but just there's so much mystery surrounding it. It's shrouded in mystery that I just want to know. I want to know what, like, he looks like he's in good spirits and it didn't look like he lost a bunch of weight or something. Like, I'm going through it and like, well, if it was COVID, like they would announce it was COVID. If it was mono, they would announce it was mono. Like what was it? I don't know. I got to the point where I'm like, did he like break his dick? And it's just something that like it's kind of embarrassing, so they just don't want to, or inappropriate, so they don't want to say what it is. Like what is it? It's his right for us to not know. It's his privacy. And I'm not trying to violate HIPAA laws, but I'm just curious. I just want to know. But he's questionable. Austin Keys is questionable, which, deep depth linebacker. Maybe he sees the field on special teams, but we got a lot of nice special teams players. But everyone else is in. Jalen Naylor's healthy. Josh Oliver had the ankle. He's in. Miles Price with the knee, which shouts out Miles Price. He was maybe the most talked about Viking that wasn't JJ McCarthy for the last month of the offseason, and that man showed up to play. Isaiah Rodgers with an elbow. He was a full participant. He's in. Xavier Scott's in. Elijah Williams is back from the hamstring. Ryan Kelly, who briefly was in the blue tent on last Monday with the toe, he was a full participant. He's in. Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave were limited, but it wasn't injury related. It was just veteran rest, which is smart. They're 30 and 32 years old, and it's a long season. But Darisaw, man, we need him out there. We need Darisaw back, man. Hopefully they learn their lesson with school, and they'll slide protections that way, and they'll give him some more help. And obviously Jordan Mason looked like a stud in pass pro, so keep him on that side and help mitigate disaster. And again, the Bears, at least on paper, have a more talented pass rush, more of a force to be reckoned with than the Falcons. So hopefully School can hold up his end of the bargain and it won't be too big of a deal. The key matchups I'm looking at are Eric Wilson and Bijan Robinson. Again, they love targeting Bijan, get the ball in his hands and let him go to work. The offensive line not creating much of a push in the run game, so it's sort of get Bijan in space and get the ball in his hands. So again, Blake Cashman is a sideline to sideline guy, and Eric Wilson, couple years older than him. So I'm expecting a big game from Eric Wilson, at least in terms of tackles. But can he get him on the ground? Can the corners step up? Can Isaiah Rodgers and Byron Murphy and potentially Dwight McGlothern, can they step up and be effective in not just the run game, but just in the short passing game and the sort of rally and tackle? There was a couple missed tackles in there from the secondary against the Bears. So that's really what I'm looking at. If we could get Bijan on the ground and get Penix off his spot so that we don't have Drake London and Darnell Mooney, because Darnell Mooney has killed us multiple times in the past when he was with the Bears. So if they're running free because of busted coverage, at the very least, can we get Penix off his spot? Can Grenard's quick get off be quicker than Penix's quick release? I think that's the keys to the game. Prop to bet. What prop bets do I like in this game for those of you that gamble? I'm going to say whatever Jordan Mason is, let's take the over on that. I'll pull that up here real quick. Rushing yards, Jordan Mason, over 58.5. I don't know. Yeah, we're taking it. Jordan Mason, he's too much of a stud. Over under on JJ McCarthy at 17.5, which is interesting because Baker Mayfield, who is a scrambler, but not as much of a runner as JJ is. And you got to remember, JJ on those first couple drives had a couple scrambles where he was a shoestring away from running for 5 to 10 yards. But Baker Mayfield last week had 5 scrambles for 39 yards. And I have to imagine at least somewhere in there, if the situation calls for it, they'll call for a designed run for JJ. So over 17.5, that's not bad. Bijan Robinson over 3.5 receptions feels like a safe bet based on what they did last week. And Bijan Robinson over 25.5 yards, I feel like is a pretty safe bet. I'm curious to see how our run defense plays out because, they were top 2 the entire year last year. And, you let Tillery go, you let Jonathan Bullard go, which that was their strength. And you bring in 2 guys who have been fairly average at run stuffing, but are tremendous pass rushers in Allen and Hargrave. But everyone looked good. Everyone looked real good. Again, the Bears, not the greatest, but you bring in Joe Tooney, you bring in Drew Dahlman, you bring in Jonah Jackson. Like, that should have theoretically improved the run game, even if you have a guy in DeAndre Swift who's sort of considered not to have the best running back vision in the league. But you should be able to do a little bit more than he did. Now, obviously, now you go from a guy like that to Bijan, so they might test it, but I think I think Bijan's going to see some targets in the pass game and 25.5 yards. Even if we end up doing a really nice job on Bijan. I think over 25.5 yards feels pretty safe. Feels pretty safe to me. But that's the preview. Atlanta Falcons at Minnesota Vikings, US Bank Stadium, Sunday Night Football. Week 2, the home opener. Should be a good game. I'm not a predictions guy because I don't want to say one thing and then something else happens, and then in the back of my mind I'm sitting here thinking, well, if I'd picked against them, then they would have won. And I don't want to pick against my team if I feel like they are going to lose, which is not necessarily the case here. But let me know your predictions in the comments. Let me know what you think the keys to victory are. Who are you looking forward to watching in this game? And subscribe, tell a friend, tell your Vikings fan friends that you got. And if you're looking for more broad football coverage, check us out on Football Heads. We are on Spotify and Apple and YouTube. And thank you for joining me on this maiden voyage. Until next time, Skull Vikes.